Pirkei Avot, first parak, Mishnah 14. This is the last of the three Mishnahs that Hillel has taught consecutively, 12, 13, 14. Here it is. Hu haya omer, right, that's Hillel. Im ein ani li, mili, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? U'ch'ani la'atzmi, ma'ani, and when I am for myself, what am I? V'im lo chshav imatai, and if not now, when? So on a superficial level, we can understand this is a fairly straightforward Mishnah, but is there anything else to glean here? And there's one idea I heard, just as this is an introductory thought, then we'll come more to the substance, but Rabbi Jack Cohen pointed this out, very powerful, several months ago. He said, notice how Hillel is speaking. He says, Im ein ani li, mili. It's self-reflective, he's thinking about himself, he's speaking about himself, he's directing this towards himself. A Mishnah means to teach. Hillel is a teacher. Why is he speaking about himself? He should say, Im ein ata lecha milecha, u'ch'ata le'atzmecha ma'ata, v'im lo chshav imatai. But that's not what he says. He focuses on himself. And Hillel actually is teaching us something. Let's just say, and this is repeated by many different sages, many scholars, certainly within Judaism. Even more recently, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter famously said this. But this is also, you almost certainly find this in other cultures. The most effective type of teaching is role modeling. That is to say, the famous kind of almost tongue-in-cheek, do as I say, not as I do. But no, we're saying do as you do. If we're focusing on what you do, then imena nili mili. That's what Hillel is saying. He's like, a person who really wants to change things has to change himself first. When he was thinking of, how do I convey this teaching? He says, it's not by lecturing at other people. Not by saying, you're not learning enough, you're not doing enough for the community, you're not doing enough chesed, you're not focusing enough during davening. He's like, if I'm not going to take care of myself, who's going to do it for me? And that's the first intro. Just seeing how Hillel speaks. But then, moving into this three-step process, it's really amazing. This the backdrop of this is actually Wolbe. I don't know if Wolbe has a formal commentary on Pirkei Avot, but one of his more well-known svarim is planting and building, right? Binyan v'zriya b'chinuch, right? B'chinuch. It's a sefer, a book on education, how to educate your children. He says something really interesting. And that is kind of like the backdrop of this explanation. That is to say, it seems like there's a planting and building element to this Mishnah. What do I mean? And this is really set through Rabbeinu Yonah and Rambam. It says, Im ein ani li, mili. Rabbeinu Yonah says, this is talking about self-motivation. That is to say, it's helpful when other people from the outside help us motivate us, right? They either give us positive encouragement, or they give us more specific criticism, or whatever it is that they're doing, or that always comes from the outside, and it's temporary. They won't always be there. Either literally people die, right? Or just they're not always with you. The only person who's with you constantly is yourself, and obviously HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? So what Rabbeinu Yonah is saying, Imei anili, if I'm not for myself, if I'm not self-motivated, if I personally don't want to do it, Mili, who's going to be for me? They'll never always be here. I have to be self-motivated. That's the first step. And then u'ch'ani la'atzmi mani. And if I am for myself, what am I? Now that I have the self-motivation, I want to do it. Okay, so what does that look like? Mata, mani. What is that? What is that vision? A person's like, I want to plant a certain tree. That's what I want to do. Mili, I'm going to plant it. Okay, but now what's that going to look like? Do you want an apple tree? Do you want an apple tree, or do you want an orange tree? Right? What are you looking for? What are you hoping will sprout from this? And just digging a little bit deeper. When we go on, let's just say, a person who needs to plant, in Wolbe's planting and building, he speaks about how when a person, again, he's speaking about children, what do you want to see in the long term? That is to say, a person needs to be self-motivated, self-directed, right? And once that happens, then they'll start taking initiative, right? They'll start being creative. They'll start to figure out how do I get to the end point that I want to get to, right? And that's critical, right? In order to kind of to plant the proper seeds, to take care of it properly, and that's kind of a longer term process and longer term goal. What happens is, and Rabbeinu Yonah really talks about this, is u'ch'ani la'atzmi mani. That's to say, he gives the analogy of a person who works a field, right? The field can produce 5 core, whatever it is, it's 1,000 bushels. But chances are, people, things get in the way, and particularly us. We're tired, we want to sleep in, we want to end early, we want to take a day off. Okay, so it might be that even though this could produce 1,000 bushels, we'll only produce 100 or 200. So this idea of uchshani latzmi mani is like, what have I produced? Now that I have that planting element, I know where I want to go. I have that vision. Am I actually going to get there? How much am I actually going to yield? What is going to happen with me? And that's where the last step comes in. So now once we're asking this question, uchshani latzmi mani, that's when v'im lo achshav eimatai comes in. Why? Because if a person wants to get something done, they need to start taking specific steps. This is building. Again, the planting is the idea is, okay, I have this long-term goal. This is where I want to go. Here's my vision. That's great. But you know what's really important? It's to build the steps, the building blocks in order to get you to where you want to go. Even actually, literally within planting, I just looked this up. Often what happens is you'll often see trees, right, or plants, and there's a structure around that plant. And this is because it's trying to direct the structure of that growth. It's important to have growth, but if a person is just kind of like, it's just unbound growth, then it becomes wild. It actually doesn't become nearly as productive as it would be if there was some sense of structure. And moreover, and this is particularly powerful and beautiful, what happens is often a plant needs structure if it's fruit bearing, because the fruit starts to weigh it down. It becomes so heavy that the plant can't support itself. So it needs a structure in order to be able to bear that fruit and keep growing. And that, I think, is an important personal lesson. There's eventually, we have a vision and we want to power forward and go through. We want to bear fruit. But as we bear fruit, do we have that structure in place in order to make that effective? That's the v'im lo achshav eimatai. If not now, when? And that's the idea. And we'll just end with one final note. Both Rambam and Rabbeinu Yonah talk about this. That is to say, within this v'im lo achshav eimatai, it's the building, that's true, but it's the building even going all the way back to the planting. Why? Because what happens is it's much easier to direct a tree, right, or a plant when it's young. It's not strong or like deeply ingrained yet in its root or its ways, like literally either it's more metaphorical ways or literally the way, like where's the trunk growing? How is it growing? Where are the branches leading? When a person sets up that structure first, you can see where it's going to be when it's older. And that's why it's important to do this when you're young. The younger you are, the more you're able to kind of take control of that and start building the structure to get you towards your more long-term goal, the easier it'll be. It's much harder to direct a tree when it's 3 feet thick, right, than it is when it's just like 6 inches, right? 6 inches, that's nothing. You could just quickly kind of like twist it with just a little bit of structure, and that'll be fine. So similarly too with people, much easier to redirect us when we're younger. I'll leave you with that, and have a great week.